Okay, guys, for some background knowledge on this crazy book and its content, I recommend you look at my pre-release thoughts. Papa, what is it, Scout? I've heard horrible things that you're a racist, Papa. They say that you don't like black people. That's silly, Scout. I don't hate black people. They're nothing compared to those dirty Chinese.
Guess who's back? Back again.
Well, here it is, folks. The most controversial book this side of World War II. What? This book review's 2 months late? What nonsense! In that time, I was carefully studying in between the lines of Go Set a Watchman. Now, I'm sure you've heard the lamestream media bash the hell out of this book, not just on points brought up before its release, but the writing as well. Now, as a teenager on the internet, it is my duty to silence all other possibly more intelligent voices so you can only hear my own. Cause I may not always get the facts straight, but one look into my eyes through this terrible screen resolution will tell you that I'm telling the truth. This book's weird. It's not like awful or anything. I mean, it's readable. It's much more of a Michael Bay film than Movie 43. A lot of time and money has been put into it. See, Scout's a woman now, and she has complex woman problems. She's no longer the innocent observer she was in Mockingbird. Oh, you were looking for an innocent child discovering the true goodness of humanity? Well, sucks to be you! This universe's Scout, or Jean-Louis, or whatever, has relationship problems to deal with. She has a complex and broken family to put up with, not to fix or sort out, just to put up with. The jaded eyes of this protagonist might be disorienting to some people looking for similarities to Mockingbird, and you will see To Kill a Mockingbird in these pages. Maycomb itself is beautifully described, and fans of the original book will feel just as much nostalgia as Scout returning to her childhood home. This recollection of the past only makes the book's missteps more difficult to digest. It's like you had the Mona Lisa, except someone scribbled on it and tilted the picture slightly sideways. You can see the art underneath, but the changes are hard to ignore. And what are these changes? Well, the biggest one is that Atticus's client in Mockingbird's famous trial is actually innocent. And for those wondering, Atticus's racism is implied to be existing for quite some time. He's a supporter of limited government and legal dominance of the states. He thinks the South isn't ready to be integrated yet. These were basically the arguments of your average segregationist back in the day. Is it racist and gross? You betcha. But that doesn't mean that these arguments weren't used, and we should still pay attention to them. Now, I've seen a lot of books in my day. Epics, mysteries, even gay novels. But this is a whole different level. We have something of a period piece, written by a non-anti-segregationist perspective. Not to say that Harper Lee was a segregationist by any means, bless her senile old heart. Rather, this book takes what was accepted as the middle ground during this time period. Of course, many people did not like the segregationist policies down south, but they also thought that integration would be too difficult or sudden for a deeply divided populace. Whereas most Americans would be disgusted by anyone not pro-integration in their books, it's important to remember that just because they weren't for the good cause doesn't mean that they were what we think of today as racist. It's up to the reader to morally judge these in-betweeners. The book definitely wants to have this discussion, as Scout tries to accept who her father is. And the conclusion of the story, which I won't spoil, doesn't exactly end with the blacks and whites of the town drinking beers and singing Kumbaya as Martin Luther King looks out in the distance. Of course, this playful racism is all well and good, but let's talk about the writing. Yes, I've heard that this writing business is still important in books, as much as E.L. James would like you to think otherwise. So how good is it? Remember those writing prompts during school that the teacher would give you and you had no time to prepare for? That you just sort of rushed through, and there was like a billion issues with it because you were never able to check your work? It's like that, except the sequel to one of the greatest literary masterpieces of all time. It's flaky and uneven. The book's questionable and controversial on a lot of levels, and makes you want to read it just to figure out what the fuss is all about. In that case, be my guest. But if you're looking for a different, well-constructed counterweight to the morals of Mockingbird, look elsewhere. Go Set a Watchman wants to have a story just as compelling as To Kill a Mockingbird, and it ultimately fails. With that in mind, I give it a out of 10. See you guys next week. But I have a special announcement to make while you're liking and subscribing. I've come up with the channel's new motto. It's straightforward. Karling creates content. See how I made everything start with a K? I'm just fun and spontaneous like that. Wait a second.